Hello and welcome along to the final episode in the second series of TGP Has A Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the last few weeks where we've been chatting to relevant icons of the TGP series who have made the league what it has done over the last 10 years. And we hope you've enjoyed all the content that we've been able to bring you on the run-up to the 10th anniversary, which is the day that this podcast is being released. And it seemed fitting then that we should have none other than Dom Smith on our final episode of TGP Has A Podcast, the man where this all started from, who had the bright idea, the execution, and the skills to keep it going with so many characters involved coming and going over the 10 years. I had a really good chat with Dom, and we had a good sit down, and we chatted about all the things that have made TGP so special, and all that we're looking forward to in the future. So here he is, Dom Smith. So, Dom Smith, welcome along to the podcast. Great to have you joining us here today, recorded in an undisclosed location somewhere in the UK, of course. Now, Dom, you are the godfather of TGP. You are the creator, the man, the myth, the legend that's behind everything that we do, week in, week out. The organisation, the setting up, the dealing with drivers' complaints, which I'm sure you get a lot of. What possessed you to start all this off back in 2011?
I don't know. It was just sort of like we'd come online. I think F1 2010 had just come out on PS3, so this whole kind of wave of online gaming became a thing. And I don't know, just sort of F1 2010 was out. Obviously, it was the first F1 game in a few years, if you exclude the 2009 version on the Wii and the PSP. And I sort of met some guys through like game chat. So like there was some guys like I think Tinners, Ben, Dan, Hambone, John, Jacko, James, and it's actually quite scary to think that some of those guys are still in TGP today. But we used to do like sprint races, which then somehow turned into one-lap championships. So you'd do 19 or 20 rounds. I think it was 19. So you do 19 rounds, one-lap races, and then for 2 hours you just have so much fun. Even though there was only like 12-man lobbies, it was just really competitive, and that sort of, I don't know, it was just sort of that urge for like competitiveness and championship was pretty enjoyable. So I don't know why, but we suddenly thought on July 15th, 2011, let's start a league, and yeah, I guess the rest is, well, 10 years later, still seem to be going, so we're doing something right.
And that would be one-lap championships across one night.
Yeah, so just basically go in a lobby. We'll set up 19 races, a lap at each, and it goes pretty quickly. It's only like maybe 3 minutes each race. But that's how we started it. That was before the league began season one, and then the one lap championships was so much fun. We thought let's do bigger races. So we started doing, I think it might be maybe it was 30% races at the time, but 25%, 30% races, and then that's how season one started in the same format it is today, really.
And who was the inaugural non-championship champion before TGP Series created? who was the original OG?
My memory is good, but I'm not sure it's that good. I don't know. I think it was always sort of the same guys. It was sort of Ben and Dan that were at the top, and yeah, and they won the first few seasons.
Interesting you mentioned Ben and Dan there. We know from looking across the past of TGP that they had one of the more fierce rivalries, shall we say, during the early days of TGP. How was it trying to control that and deal with, I'm sure, the dissatisfaction of probably both of those, actually? How was it dealing with that?
Yeah, so I guess I was still relatively new to the whole, obviously, league racing thing. I was obviously 10 years younger. We started on F1 2010. I think we did the first 4 seasons in the space of 2 months. So I think that was like a season every 2 weeks. We used to do, for some reason, we all had a lot of time on our hands, I guess. And we did like maybe races on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But yeah, obviously there was a lot of races coming in thick and fast, so you were constantly having to update things. Ben and Dan were the two quickest guys, so they were obviously at the front. There were various reasons to why maybe Ben and Dan were getting a little frustrated at each other. Obviously, there was a lot of competition at the time. And I don't really know why, but those two just seemed to... It started off pretty well, but then as it gradually carried on, I think onto the next game, F1 2011, when we started to spread the seasons out a bit more, for whatever reason, those two seemed to start getting involved in some sort of heated rivalry incidents. I think there was one race in Japan, which was literally the carbon copy of Senna and Prost from the Japanese Grand Prix in 1990, and I don't know, maybe they saw on TV and thought, I want to do that in a league race. But whatever it was very confusing. But they did still have lots of great moments, lots of great passes. It's just a shame that there were two moments in their time where they sort of, I guess took each other out in an attempt to win the championship.
Yeah, well, of course, we spoke to Dan about that recently, which you can catch in his podcast. So go back and make sure you check that one out because we found out some interesting things about that at the time. So putting those two aside, then those early years, that F1 2010, 2011 time, that must have been tricky with you organising it and juggling it at the same time, as well as other commitments that you had on your life. As you said, doing those few races on a couple of days during a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, that must have been quite difficult to manage and keep on top of all that with everything else going on in your life, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I think I just started college. That was pretty exciting. I left high school, gone into this new kind of place with loads of new people, doing loads of exciting new work, finally getting to do what I wanted, which was media. But obviously, at the same time, I was running this league. And obviously we flew through the first few seasons, didn't we? I think it was only when it got to F1 2012 did we start to calm it down and do 4 seasons max per game cycle. But the first few seasons, for me, are still probably my favourite seasons. I don't know why, but the racing were always so close. There were so many great battles. I remember great moments. Maybe it's a nostalgia thing. But season 4, I actually got my first ever win, and that was at Belgium on the final lap. I think it was changeable conditions. I'd pitted for Inters or Dries. I can't remember now, one or the other. And I got the pass, last lap, won the race. And I loved it so much. The idea of running this championship, and I wasn't obviously the quickest guy, which is probably a good thing. It's probably better to have the league host further down the order, so you're not effectively in the title fight yourself. But I enjoyed it. Everyone else seemed to like it, so we just kept doing it night after night. And, the hunger was there. We managed to find the time to do it. So, yeah, I have no regrets on doing so many seasons so quickly.
And how was it taking the first win in your own league that you'd started up? Because I imagine that would have been a little bit of a concern for you, as you mentioned there, being the quickest in the league that you'd set up yourself. So was it a little bit of relief after so long? You said it was sort of season 4 there, or was it, did it still feel just as nice?
Yeah, it was brilliant. I remember the reaction at the time. I was pretty happy to have got that win. And the way I did it too, it was like the last lap, made the right strategy. I wasn't the quickest driver on track at all, but the right call gave me the win, and right at the end as well. But I don't know, it's weird winning in your own league. It's got to the point now where I just sort of, you take it. You don't really, you sort of forget it's your own league. You just sort of, you join in on the fun. No one seems to have had an issue with it. I know I'm not the quickest anyway, so the chances of me winning are normally pretty rare anyway. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's a weird feeling, but I enjoy to win stuff.
It must be nice though that it does feel like that for you, that it doesn't feel like it's still your league. You can still take part in it and be competitive, but not sort of feel a little bit under pressure to either do well or a little bit embarrassed if you are winning. That must be quite a nice feeling at the same time. It's even after all this time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think obviously there's times where sort of we've got a system in place where I can still be punished for incidents. If I get involved in a crash, I'm still going to be punished. What happens is basically, obviously, a driver reports it to TGP, which is obviously me. I send guys who I know are going to be, fair. They're not going to side towards me because they don't want to upset me or anything. So I'll give it to those guys, and those guys will come back and say, look, you've got this penalty. And I'll go, yeah, that's absolutely fine. Even I might be against it, but fair enough. I've got to respect the process in place. And yeah, I think we've got a fair system where if I do something wrong, I do still get penalised, and I've lost wins in the past because of it. So, I've been gutted, but at the same time, it's good to know that I am competing fairly. And yeah.
It must be nice to sort of, it doesn't have that dictatorship feel. I mean, you often had the nickname bounced around, I know, from hearing it, Dictator Dom, but it very much isn't like that. It isn't like that at all, is it, really? And that must be quite nice for you, that you can feel that everyone can come and say something honestly to you, like, Dom, I'm really sorry, but in that last race, I feel like you did do something which you shouldn't have, and I'm afraid I'm going to report you for it. It must feel quite nice that people can still come to you and say those sorts of things.
Yeah, of course, but when we finish recording, Mike, can you let me know who said those words, and I'll be sure to kick them out the league. The people that said those comments. But no, it seems to get on well. People seem to like the system, I guess. Not everyone's going to like me, but I feel like I'm doing it fairly. I don't want to do it unfairly. I would feel, you'll probably hear later, but there's been times where I've sort of not wanted to win. I don't want to be the guy at the top of my own championship because I feel that looks wrong. So I would happily not win than win sometimes if it means I'll be recognised at the top of something, because that's not what I want. I want other people to have that feeling of win. I'm just setting this thing up and taking part for fun. And if I do win something along the way, then of course that's nice. But it's not designed to give me success.
No, well, that would be a bit pointless doing it then, wouldn't it? You don't want to make a league just for yourself to win in it. Um, did you imagine back in July 2011 that 10 years later we would have had 35 seasons of TGP1 go ahead? We would have expanded into a second division of F1 and TGP2, and that would have had 28 seasons run of it. We would have had 10 seasons on a simulator racing game designed for GT cars. We would have expanded onto a Gran Turismo game. We would have had leagues on FIFA, on Rocket League. Did you really expect back then that it would go this far?
I don't think so. I don't really know what I thought, to be honest. We set the league up, didn't even think of how far it was going to go, how many years we'd do it for, but for whatever reason, the league just kept seeming to do all right. So we just kept continuing it. There was never any reason to debate if we stop it or if we stop expanding. And obviously when new games came out, we had Project Cars come out, GT Sport came out, we had Rocket League, these sudden free games that everyone was really invested in. And as the league was growing, there was obviously hunger to do more and more events. And yeah, we've just sort of, as these games come out and the hunger's there from drivers, we set up the leagues and we start to do it. But yeah, and I don't think I expected it to go on for 10 years, but at the same time, I did not expect it to go on for 10 years, you know? As long as the people are happy and you're still enjoying what you're doing, then keep it going, you know?
And you made quite a conscious decision relatively early on, I guess, to limit the expansion of the likes of TGP 1 and 2, and it was obviously quite a decision to go on to TGP 2, but you very consciously didn't set up a TGP 3. And as you rightfully said there, quite early on, you decided that there would only be a maximum of 4 seasons of per game on a division, on a series. Was that the right call, do you think, to limit the amount of expansion that you would make relatively early on?
Yeah, I think so. I don't have any regrets or anything on not expanding it. The chances have been there in the past. We've had plenty of times where we've had sign up forms, and obviously I know I've got say 40 spaces for TGP1 and TGP2, 20 for each, and I'll have a list of 55 to 60 names, and I'm like, well, that's just from me putting a list out. I could easily go and ask more people and get that up to 80 or 100, and before you know it, you could have leagues of 5. But I don't know. I seem to prefer it at a smaller number. I think quality is better than quantity. Personally, I would rather have 2 leagues that do really well, and of course, the more leagues I do bring in, the more work I've got to do. Yeah, I could hand that work over to someone else, but I feel like it's good as it is. I don't think it needs to have a third or a fourth tier. Again, we're in the current situation where the current TGP2 seasons that have just finished, I've now got to work out how I'm going to get 10 new guys into next season's lineups, which is obviously difficult anyway, because I don't really want to make a third tier. Maybe one day I'll be forced to, because I don't want to upset too many people. But I don't know. I feel like it's better to keep it shorter than bigger. And even now with the 4 seasons a game, I think the maximum we ever do now is 2 seasons a game, if that. So, yeah.
No, it's good, and we mentioned then obviously the expansion of the league into TGP2, which you have had a fair amount of success on over your times competing in that second tier. How did it feel winning that championship in season 2, and taking that glory after being in TGP1, of course, for so long? And how did it feel to take that glory in that second tier?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I was at that sort of pace where I wasn't quick enough really to challenge in TGP1. I was always sort of maybe at my absolute best I could get a good result in the midfield, but really I was sort of at the back end of the field. I did start quite well, I think, on F1 2010. I was up there, obviously I got a few wins in the first several seasons, but my pace sort of was never really at a level where I could ever go for a consistent top 5, top 10 finisher. So when TGP2 started, I didn't do the first season. I deliberately didn't want to do it. I left other drivers to do that. And then season 2 I thought was the right time to enter. I came in at season 2, and even then, I think I only won 3 races all season. So I wasn't really a season I dominated. It was more consistency that beat. I think I was against Mike Davis, Sam Ryan, those guys. That was really fun, competitive. And as I said, we had a close fight all season. And there was even a moment at Belgium. I don't know why. I didn't ask for it. I didn't want it. But my teammate on the last lap let me through, which I felt a bit weird by. And even today, I still think that's a win I don't deserve on the records. And since then, I have given back a win to a future teammate, Chris Johnson, which again I'm sure we'll come to later. But yeah, I don't know. I won that championship by I think about 15 points in the end, and it was really close. It was a good feeling, and I remember at the time being pretty happy. But then I had to also say to myself, right, you just won this season. You can't go win the next one now, because if you start winning multiple leagues in your own league, that's probably not going to look good. But at the time, I remember feeling pretty chuffed by it. It was a good feeling.
Was that competitive urge still within you to then go back and take the title again? Was that sort of motivation and the competition within you just sort of saying, "Go on, go and do it again"?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm such a competitive person. Every time I see something, I want it to be a challenge. I don't know why, but when I was at school, like for some reason, I remember organising a Connect Four championship at lunch once. I remember setting up like various events, sport events at high school. Even at uni, we sort of did like this go-karting thing. So we had like a little go-karting championship thing, and I don't know, I'm just so competitive. So the idea of being in this league, which I happen to run, and being able to fight against these people, and it's always good fights. I've had so many clean battles with so many drivers. It's always a pleasure to race against a lot of the drivers. But yeah, and I guess obviously I had the urge to fight for a second title, which I eventually got. I think about 9 seasons later in season 11.
Yeah, we'll touch on season 11 a little bit later on as well. We all know the stories that were surrounding that one at the time. But you successfully managed to keep it going from game to game early on. How did you find that? Was that a difficulty, particularly sort of in the early? Obviously, as you get a bit more momentum going, it gets easier. But was it a worry that you would just be running this across one game and you'd then find it hard to keep the momentum going in future games?
I don't think so. I think it was everyone in the league was such big fans of F1. Everyone was always going to buy the next game. As soon as the new game came out, everyone had it on release. So the hunger was always still there. People still had the game. They still had that sort of competitiveness to try and beat each other. So I think I don't know, it was always pretty easy in that way. The only real challenge sort of came when we went from, I think it was PS3 to PS4, because obviously there's no cross-platform. Half the drivers were getting PS4s, half were getting PS3s still. So that was obviously a bit of a period where obviously everyone was on different consoles. But thankfully, I think the game that came out, F1 2015, wasn't actually very playable for the first few months. So we had that extra time to allow people to catch up, get the new consoles and stuff. But I don't know, the momentum was always sort of there just to continue game through game. And yeah, we've been pretty lucky with that. And I guess now the new challenge is going to be with the PS5 coming out. How are we going to do that? But I'm sure it's going to be something similar. People will gradually get PS5s. Looks like we might even get cross-platform gaming. So yeah, who knows? Maybe in the future we'll have Xbox players playing with us PlayStation lot.
And it's funny you mentioned Xbox there. Obviously, we did expand into a TGP Xbox League as well at one point. Obviously, you made the conscious decision at that point to expand onto a different console, but there was always the feeling that we were PlayStation League and a PlayStation division. Do you wish that TGP Xbox went further, or do you feel that it ran its course and it did good at the time, and actually it was wise keeping it mainly to just PlayStation?
Yeah, so we did 4 seasons of it back on F1 2012. I'm not quite sure how we started it, but I remember a few people asked like, "Oh, you guys need to do an Xbox League. We'd love to take part." And then I think from there, those guys knew guys, and then we asked a couple of others, and then suddenly we had a full grid. But the Xbox season was brilliant. As you said, it was always been sort of a PlayStation League, but the idea to expand was a little exciting. I didn't run it, of course. I left a good team of people to take charge of that. I didn't really have the time, as I said, to do other leagues, so I handed that over to, I think it was a guy called Alex Stopp. He took charge of the Xbox League. He ran it for all of the 4 seasons. I remember seasons 1 and 2 were thrilling. Season 3 was fantastic. I remember watching the highlights back from drivers, and the championship fight was so close, down to the last race, really competitive, sorry. And then in season
New word
4,
you've just invented there.
Yeah. Then it came to season 4, and I'm not quite sure why. Maybe me not being so hands-on with it may have been a bad side, but sort of, I think a few drivers started to fall out with each other, and then some people weren't happy with the decisions that were being made. And again, I was sort of at a backseat here, so maybe I should have taken more of a hot seat in it, and done a few more of the decisions and stuff. But yeah, we still had a great time, loads of great memories. And after season 4, I don't know, it just sort of felt like seasons 1, 2, and 3 had been so good, but when season 4 wasn't as good, I don't know. I just sort of thought, let's just keep it to PlayStation. So we didn't expand it, and there's no regrets because a lot of the guys from the Xbox League, such as Jack Hickman, Jordan Lane, Brandon Feely, they've all come over to the PS League because they enjoyed it so much. They've got PlayStations, they've joined. Jack Hickman now races with us still in GT, and he was second, I think, actually in TGP1 last season. Brandon Feely's gone on to win a TGP2 championship. Jordan's gone on to get about 40 pole positions in TGP2. So, a lot of guys have moved over. And yeah, I don't think there's any regrets not to have continued the Xbox League. But it was good fun.
It sounds like it's ran its course, really, and I think that you can see that through the whole of TGP's history. Really, is you seem to know when it's a good time to leave something and when it's a good time to keep something going. And at times things are brilliant and they work well, but why try and to a certain degree flog a dead horse for something when people are not necessarily losing interest, but it's run its course, it's run out of steam.
Yeah, I think maybe because of what happened with the Xbox League and how the fourth season wasn't necessarily, a fitting conclusion. Maybe that's decided what I do in the future, because I think, with Project Cars, season 10 was brilliant. We had a Owen versus Softy title decided. Went down to the last race. There were various great battles throughout the season, but it just felt like, the time was right. Also, I have OCD, so the fact we ended on season 10 was a great way to end it. But the time felt right to end it there, even though we had such a great battle. Same with TGP Dirt. We've just had another thrilling competitive season, various winners, various stage winners, championship going down to the final round. But it just feels like a fitting way to bring it to a stop. Same with Rocket League. I think the last match in Rocket League was an absolute thriller. I think it was Aiden Wingsman. Their team needed to get 3 goals in 30 seconds to win it, and they did it last second, got the winner. Fantastic. But we stopped it just because, I don't know, we don't end it when it's in its peak, but we end it when we feel like, right, that was pretty good, let's take a break, or let's do something else now.
Well, it's a good thing to do, and it's a good way to keep the interest there, and you can look back on those sort of things fondly then, can't you, rather than look back and think that, it's a shame that they did come to such a disappointing conclusion, and there's always the what if questions there rather than the we should have comments, isn't it? I guess, which is nice to keep that around a league or an event. You touched on it very briefly a little bit earlier on, obviously in relation to university, which obviously took up a lot of your time as we came to quite a critical point of the TGP series. How was it having to take a little bit more of a back seat to TGP series and not racing as much when your uni degree was going on so prevalently? How did you find that? Was it difficult taking more of a back seat?
I don't think so. I think we had good guys in place that were able to run it, and I was more than happy. I trusted them. They did it very well. They'd send me results. I'd update the standards. Races were still going ahead as planned. It was all pretty good. I missed out on actually being able to do the racing. I think I only ever got to race when it was sort of Christmas or the summer when I was back home. I didn't really want to do racing in the first couple of years of uni because obviously I was getting to, new experiences. I'm at university. I need to get out there, get drunk every night. I think it was only really the third year of uni. Yeah, of course. I think it was only the third year of uni that I started to actually do some of the league racing because, I was with a couple of mates now. They knew about TGP and I thought, let's race anyway. But no, it was weird. I was more than happy to take a back seat. The guys did an excellent job that were standing in, to run it smoothly. And but eventually the hunger, I think, became over me. And I think I did start to return to racing in my third year of uni.
And that must have been quite nice to be able to come back as well. You went away and you had that. The hunger was still there, and if you'd sort of taken a bit more of a back seat and it wasn't there, then as you said, you knew there was a good bunch of guys there looking after it. But it must have actually been quite nice then making that long-awaited return, and coming back to it, and being able to put the time back into it as well, and really enjoying it. Because I guess that if you'd been doing it while your heart wasn't fully in it, you probably would have lost more interest, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think precisely that. I think the right thing was to just hand it over to, a group of guys to take charge of it for those 2 or so years where I didn't really have the time to do it. It was able to carry on quite well. And I think if I had just kept doing it, maybe I would have, not only would the TGP I would have lost interest in it, but maybe at the same time I would have missed out on a bit of my uni experience, which of course I never wanted to do. I love running TGP. It's fantastic. But at the same time, I still need to, we still need to live our lives, don't we? That's why we don't do, I think that's why a lot of the drivers in TGP are it's not all about we have to practice day. It's more of a relaxed kind of, We have fun. We're competitive. We want to win still, but we've still got lives. We got
Well,
stuff to
that's
do.
that's how it's how it's got to be, isn't it? And you've got to it's been run to a way where it does still create competitive league racing, but it's fun at the same time. And that's, I think, what's been the ethos about the whole series ever since you set it up, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. It was never meant to be like a religious kind of. We have to practice every day. I mean, maybe at the start of the league it was because we all loved the game so much. Suddenly having F1 2010 on PS3 was pretty cool. But yeah, as we've gone on, I think a lot of the drivers will do a season, maybe sit out a season, then come back for the next season, just so to because they haven't got time to be doing various leagues constantly. But yeah, we got a good group of people. I think everyone enjoys. Well, I hope everyone enjoys racing it when they do, and then yeah, I think we'll probably continue that same ethos.
Hmm. And it must be quite nice as well, looking back on the past of TGP series and remembering that you were able to take part in the Codemasters event with the multiple leagues, of course. That must be quite nice to look back on and think that the series that you set up was able to take part in something ran by the company that created the game, which enabled you to create the league. So it must have been quite nice to have that little bit of recognition to take part in that time ago.
That was pretty cool. Yeah, I remember they advertised the Cody's League Championship, and I remember going, "That's pretty sweet." They wanted like I think 7 or 8 leagues to compete against each other. I think some of those were like AOR, TOC, Wheel to Wheel Racing, and then TGP. We managed to get accepted as well, which is pretty exciting. But then, as exciting as it was, unfortunately the dates didn't suit us at all. They said, "Okay, we're going to do this on I think it was a Thursday or something," and for us, a lot of our best drivers couldn't do the Thursday. I think we had obviously at the time we had Dean, we had James, we had Ben, we had Dan, and yet none of them could do the Thursday. So suddenly we found ourselves in a position where we were putting forward drivers that weren't necessarily the quickest in the league. So it wasn't really a real kind of a showcase of
Representation, I guess, of what the
yeah,
league could do.
of what we could do. So I think for the first couple of weeks we had Isaac, and Isaac of course has gone on to become an esports world champion. So maybe we did still have a good. At the time, maybe he wasn't so quick on F1, but at the time we had Isaac, we had Mark Leonard, I think for the first race, and lap one, race one, they took each other out. I could not believe it. I was like, what are you guys doing? So I think the next race, it wasn't so much of an issue, but then even from round 3 onwards, I think Isaac could no longer do Thursdays, and I was like, oh man, oh look. There was one week where we did manage to get, I think it was Johners and Dean to do a race in America, and that was the first real chance we could put forward drivers that we knew could, go on and win the race. So Dean, I think qualified, he may have qualified on pole actually, it was either first or second. He was first into turn 1, but then got spun round by another driver from another league. Suddenly he was back in, I think it was 15th or something. He had to pit for a new front wing, and even still he came back to finish. I think it was second or third, and it was a great relief to finally get that first podium. But at the same time, it's like we got spun to the back, and we only got we still only got what, second or third in the end. We could have easily have won that, so that was a bit gutting to not. Cause we never got that win in the end. Dean couldn't do any more weeks, and that was it. Dean's one-off appearance was he got us a podium, but despite having to go to the back, and I think come the final week of the season, we only had one driver to put forward out of 2, and that was Owen. And no offence, Owen, but we didn't really stand a chance. So it was a shame. It was great to be a part of it, but yeah, unfortunately the dates didn't suit us, and it wasn't a great representation of our drivers.
And obviously that's when the league really started sort of kicking off and going from strength to strength, really, wasn't it? Obviously you had those great early years which you spoke about and talked about the nostalgia of it, but we had the likes of sort of Isaac and Owen and such like coming forward. Some other drivers coming in from other leagues as well. You mentioned TOC as well. We had a few of those drivers come over to join us. How do you think that was critical that the league was able to keep going, and despite competitions from other leagues very much establishing themselves, you were able to sort of keep going from strength to strength?
Yeah, I guess so. We've had obviously challenges through the years. We've had drivers join us, new drivers. I think it's always good to get a new roster of drivers. You don't want the exact same drivers, do you, from day one to the very end? Or otherwise, it suddenly gets to a point where any new one comes in, everyone's going to be looking at them going, do we want this guy in? So I think it's good to constantly update your lineups, keep getting new faces in. As you said, the TOC drivers, there was a league called TOC, which had the likes of Jack Pearson, Phil Bargewell, the Soft Cop, Ginger Andy, and unfortunately their league decided to sort of end around F1 2013, which was when we actually first met Andy, I think I met Andy in a sprint lobby, and I messaged him going, "Oh wow, you sound like a really good commentator. Do you want to do some TGP races?" And then Andy came to TGP, did some commentary for us, and then through that, I think we got to know the likes of Phil, Softy, Jack, and a Nail joined. So it was good to get some new faces there. Even through game chat, we've met new drivers through that. I think Aidan Griffins, drivers like him, we met through game chat on old F1 version. So suddenly he came into the league. So we've constantly been updating those lineups. New drivers come in. Obviously, other leagues have. I mean, if you look at Twitter now, I think there's about 2,000 different Twitter racing leagues, not just the Twitter Grand Prix series. So, there's plenty of leagues, but we've able to kept a good bunch of drivers, and yeah, it seems pretty strong at the moment. I don't want to tempt fate, but we seem to be doing all right, which is good.
And you mentioned the bringing of Andy over to start doing the commentary back in, that must have been end of 2014, early 2015, I think it would have been,
Yeah.
when he made his first appearance for us. Obviously, we spoke to Andy recently as well. How big was that for the league? Suddenly getting commentators in to and like some a personality like Andy doing it as well. Do you think that was instrumental for the league's growing popularity?
Potentially, yeah. I think it definitely with Andy, he was such a good commentator. I remember just meeting this guy in a sprint lobby, and I'm like, "Well, this guy's brilliant." He was just commentating on like a 3-lap race. I was having a battle with someone, and this guy was just in the game chat commentating away, and I was like, "This is amazing." So I remember messaging him saying like, "Come on, do some commentary for TGP." I think the first couple of times he ignored me, but then I sold it to him eventually. I said, "Look, we've got this guy called Joe Sayer. He streams the races. Your voice can be heard on YouTube. We can hopefully, put these videos online, social media, and they can, go around, and hopefully, one day you might get some sort of commentary thing from it." And that's when Andy first replied. I think it was like, "Okay, I'll be there." So we did the first race with us. But yeah, I mean, I think having Andy was brilliant. I don't think any leagues really had commentators back then. I remember, I don't think Race Department had commentators. I don't think AOR were doing commentators yet. It was just sort of, here's some highlights. Maybe they would do like post-race sort of narration. But yeah, so I guess league commentary was pretty new, and we were lucky that we found Andy. And yeah, Andy obviously started with us then, and he's still with us now, 6 years later, which is brilliant because Andy's fantastic, and I'm sure, potentially a future, motorsport commentator.
Well, it's brilliant to have someone like Andy in with the rostrum. Not necessarily taking part in the races as such, but being there for the commentary. He's made so many, or been part of so many of TGP's iconic moments over the last couple of years. How do you think that the streaming side and the commentary side has really helped TGP over the past few years? I mean, it grow its audience as well, and reach out to new drivers.
Yeah, so it's been good. The idea of streaming is pretty exciting, isn't it? We didn't always used to broadcast the early races of sort of the PS3 days, but then suddenly we get this sort of leaf of life when we've got Joe Sayer recording, we've got Ginger Andy commentating, and suddenly the hunger was like, we want this every week. So we started doing it every week. We had more commentators come in. We had you, of course, Mike. You're also a fine commentator yourself. Plenty of other commentators as well. We've been streaming it. Various drivers now upload their highlights, and there's always a constant barrage of sort of like a footage out there for people to watch, highlights. I think in a TGB1 chat, every week there'll be a great race, and then we'll see so many drivers upload their own views, and everyone wants to watch each other's views, even though it's the same race, and they've probably seen it a million times. They still want to see from a different driver's perspective. And we've had drivers like, I think recently, we've had, of course, Sam Hickey, who came into TGB2, and suddenly his whole school was watching the stream, which was, and his family, which was quite fascinating. Suddenly you've got all these new young kids who wanted to watch and see how he's getting on, and maybe they'll themselves want to join and race against their mate, in the future.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to be able to reach those audiences which you might not have been able to before, and to have it live as well. It just adds so much more to it. You mentioned about making highlights and such like before, but you've got to try and engage people to watch the highlights there. Whereas having it live, as a host, it must be a little bit more of a privilege, as a league host, to be able to have that facility there, to be able to push it out to people and immediately get their attention when they're seeing it. This is going on right now. These races are happening right now, and you could watch the drama unfold as it is, rather than just the cherry-picked elements of it, and that must be quite nice to make the most of.
Yeah, I mean it's prime time, really, isn't it? It's in the evenings of midweek, so it's great chance just to tweet, here's a link, come watch it, come join the fun. They'll watch the stream. Of course, we have 2 races a night, as opposed to, I think maybe we're the only league that have 2 races a night. I think every league does either one 50% race or longer. But there's 2 races there, so maybe if you watch the first race, there's still a second race to come, which is another, of course, thrilling encounter because you got the first laps, the battles in the midfield, the fight for the win, the checkered flag, all that stuff. So yeah, I think that's good that we have that, and it's great that people want to watch it. It's great that we can keep streaming it, and long may it continue. I think now, if you didn't stream it, you'd feel a bit lost. People aren't racing anymore, but used to race in the past. They want to know what's going on in the championships. So people have that hunger, and hopefully we can keep giving them the content for it.
We touched on earlier about the controversial second title of yours. It wasn't actually as controversial as some say, but
hang on, Mike.
It did involve me very inadvertently actually helping you out. Maybe that's why I'm still here. But how was it when on that last night, you versus Martin for the title? This is all the way back in season 11 of TGP2. Cast your minds back to the early part of 2015. Sprinting up the road to a friend of yours' house to have to try and compete in the final round to keep your championship lead. You mentioned there's 2 races a night. You weren't there for the first race in the night, and Martin went and took the win. And then suddenly, last round, you've got Martin on great form. You're somewhere completely different, racing on a friend of yours' account. How did that even end up happening?
I mean, it's a good job we had 2 races a night, then, isn't it? If we did one 50% race, I'd have been screwed.
You've been out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I had sort of, I think a 24-point lead or something in the championship. I thought 2 races to go. I just need to, play it cool, get the results, a podium or something. Hopefully, would be enough. But then suddenly, I got home from whatever I'd been out with my mates that day. I got back. It was like 6:00. The league started at like 7. Suddenly, I cooked some food. I go onto my PlayStation, turn it on, and suddenly it's like BT Wi-Fi is down, and I'm like, what's this? So I kept trying to restart it, tried everything I could, and it wasn't working. It started to get to the point where I was like, I'm not going to be able to race tonight. And then that was pretty, it was the title decider. It was the final week. Andy was commentating. There was going to be footage of it. There was going to be, all sorts of entertainment. 2 drivers who had been, me and Martin had been so close, so fierce all season. I think we were teammates as well, actually. And suddenly it came down to this final night. And then I realized, it was 7:00. The first race was beginning. And I was like, I'm not going to make this. So I had to sort of think on my feet. And I just, for whatever reason, was like, I've got a mate, Rodriguez Owen, who lives about a 20-minute walk away, maybe 25 minutes. And he had a PlayStation 3 as well. So I thought, well, if I get to his house, as long as he's fine with it, and he was, by the way, I could sprint to his house in time for the second race and do it from there. And there was a few things I forgot because I had to get to his house. I had to install the game. I had to complete the tutorial, which is some like F1 2014 testing at Abu Dhabi, which is actually good practice because the final race was at Abu Dhabi. But I had to quickly do that, get that installed. Thankfully, it didn't take too long to install. He had good internet. His was fine. So I remember getting to his house, sat in sort of his kitchen with his TV, my game, his console. Suddenly, I was able to do that second race. And unfortunately for me, Martin had won or finished second, I think, in that penultimate race. Whatever it was,
He won it.
Oh, there you go then. He now had, I think, a 1 or 2 point championship lead. So suddenly, I now had to beat Martin. And Martin, I knew, was quicker than me. I was only ahead of him because he'd missed a few races earlier in the season. So he'd been sort of catching that gap. And eventually, now he was ahead of me. It looked almost impossible. But yeah, I managed to get in time for that second race. And I don't know why, whatever it was, maybe I was sitting in a better position or something. But suddenly, my first lap in this guy's house, and thank you, Rodriguez Owen, by the way. Suddenly I set,
if you're listening, thanks, Rodriguez Owen.
Suddenly I set I think my best ever qualifying lap, to be honest. I took pole. I don't think anyone expected that. Andy was very surprised. And yeah, it was quite a shock. So suddenly I got those, obviously, this was the time where you got, I think, points for qualifying, 3 for first, 2 for second, 1 for third. So suddenly it was literally whoever finished ahead of who in the race was going to be champion. And I knew I was first. I think Martin might have been third. So I just had to beat him. I knew it was still a very tough ask. But my life was made a little easier on lap 1 when Martin got into an incident with yourself, Mike Noon.
Yeah, with with yours truly.
Yeah, and what did happen there? Did you hit him, or was it a racing incident?
I honestly can't remember at this point. But it was relatively entertaining. I just remember Andy's commentary in the commentary box as it was happening, and I think I was actually out after the end of that lap 1 because of it. But
Well, you
Yeah.
helped me massively,
No,
and
I didn't
yeah, I
help you
remember
in
the
the
time.
previous race because you overtook me for the win, but I certainly helped you in that last one. But
It's all right,
gosh,
Mike. The second race counts. But yeah,
exactly.
I remember it was at the point where I was suddenly at the lead of the race, and then Martin was at the back of the grid, and I was like, "Wow, this is going rather well." But I remember praying for no safety car because as soon as the safety car came out, suddenly Martin would be right back on me. He'd probably pass me. He'd probably still win it. So I remember every lap just hoping and hoping that no safety car came out, and thankfully that safety car did not come out. I think at the time I was fighting Aiden for the lead, and I just let him go. He was probably going to pass me anyway, but I thought, yeah, you can go. I'm not getting involved in anything here. Then it was the same with Chris Johnson for P2. I thought, yeah, don't need this. You go through, Chris. Gave him second place. I think I might have finished third in the end, or maybe even fourth. But whatever it was enough. I beat Martin. There was no safety car, and I bought Rodriguez Owen plenty of drinks that night because it was uni night. It was what's it called? It was called
Two for Tuesdays. No, it's Domino's.
it, it was I can't remember what it was called. It was Socials Night. That was it. Socials Night. And yeah, I paid for his entry. I bought him a very amount of large drinks, and yeah, I had a good time. Good night to celebrate what was a dramatic title decider, but one that I feel, I did deserve to win. Maybe might have missed a few races, yeah, early in the season, but it was still, closely fought, and it was a thrilling conclusion. I felt.
Now, the other title deciding moment you were heavily involved in a TGP2 pass, which is beyond that, was your, how should we say, your lack of compassion towards your teammate, Chris Johnson. Chris Johnson has been in TGP2 for a long time, never won a title. Dom famously said he was going to win a title back in season 20? No, 17. I think he said he was going to win season 17 and didn't.
Sorry,
Why
Chris.
why didn't you let him through, which would have gifted him the title? Did you feel that something within you, as the league host, meant that you couldn't, or was there something else?
Yeah, so this is where it becomes difficult when suddenly you're the league host and you find yourself in a position where you are effectively deciding which way the title goes. You don't want to really be involved in that at all unless you are, outside of running the league. So it was Chris Johnson against Jamie, against I think Jack Gooding for the title. There was those three drivers. I think maybe there was a fourth driver as well in it. I think maybe I was involved at the start of the season. But a couple of bad results for me. I mean, I was sort of out of it going into the last 2 weeks. And then Chris hadn't been the quickest driver. Jack Gooding had more wins than him. Chris, I think, had won maybe 2 races all season. But Chris, remarkable consistency as usual. He's known for his brilliant, consistent results, and he'd been doing that all season. He was in the fight. And then I remember it was the fourth to last race. I was leading at Mexico. Chris was second. And I knew closing on Chris was Jack Gooding and Jamie, Chris's two title rivals. And I had to really get a hurry on or just let Chris go. And remembering, I think I mentioned it earlier on, how someone gifted me a win at Belgium once. I thought, well, that's one win I didn't deserve, so I can give one back here. So I just pulled over, let Chris go, and then made it sort of hard for Jack Gooding and Jamie. Fair, but I made it hard for them to pass me. In the end, they got through pretty easy on the straights. Chris went on to win that race, so I had already helped Chris massively. I felt I'd given him 7 points there. And then at the third to last race, suddenly again, I found myself ahead of Chris, and I was like, oh, here we go again. So I just let Chris through. And then again at the penultimate race, Chris was behind me again. I think it was at Baku, so Chris was fighting Jack Gooding, so I had to sort of let they were so close, they were side by side, and I had to somehow get myself in between them. So I managed to find a perfect spot to let Chris go round the outside, and then I had just enough gap to fit in between him and Jack Gooding, and that meant Jack Gooding couldn't get me until I think 3 corners later, which meant Chris went on to finish ahead of Jack Gooding by like a few tenths. So I'd already helped Chris in the fourth and the third and the second to last races. So I put him in the title fight. So, he wouldn't have been in that title fight without me having to let him through in the previous 3 races. So we got to the final race. I think he needed 15 points to win the title, and this is where it was down to him. We had to go and get like a win or a second at least, and hope Jack Gooding was a little further down the order. I didn't think I'd need to help Chris, to be honest, but for some reason on lap 1, Jack Gooding had some weird DNF glitch where he hit a curb and it just instantly DNF'd his car, and he was out of the race, and that was it. Suddenly, Chris Johnson just needs to get 15 points, and he's beaten Jack to the title. But Chris, obviously not expecting what had happened to Jack Gooding, tried an aggressive move just a corner before that to try and get through on Jack, but he knew it was a risky one. He felt he had to do it, but he just spun himself around basically, and that was him then at the back of the grid. Obviously, moments later, Jack DNFs, and suddenly Chris, who only needs 15 points now, is at the very back of the order. But Chris, it was suddenly down to him now, and yeah, at that moment knew what was probably going to come later in the race. I think whoever was in the lead, shot off. They had that in the bag. I was P2. I think Joe was third, and Chris, who had fought his way back through the field, was now in fourth. So Chris just needed one more place. I was P2. Either Chris had to overtake Joe into third, which I don't think he was going to do, because at this point Chris's tyres were destroyed. Of course, he pitted lap 1, and Joe had just come out on fresh softs. So really, it was down to me having to let Chris through. And as the lap sort of went on, and I remember Andy commentating at the time, he was in our party, he was like, when's Dom going to let him through? Surely he's not going to do it at the very last corner of the last lap. And it got to the lap, and I just thought, I can't do this. Those are the things that were going through my head. Like, can I just hand Chris the championship? I had, obviously, Jack Gooding in a party with me at the time, and I was like, I'm the league host. I can't really just take the title away from this guy by me. I can't. I don't know. Maybe other hosts would find it different, but I felt like I couldn't be the one to decide the championship going against someone there. So I didn't let Chris through, and I know Chris was expecting me to let him through, and I think he was very surprised when I didn't. And I think he's now, even today, like 5-6 years later, he still hates me. But I don't know. I just felt that hard to pull over. I didn't want to gift him the championship. I felt like Jack had deserved it. He'd won more races. He'd been the better driver. He'd been very unfortunate with the way he DNF'd. Literally, he hit a curb and it just instantly DNF'd him. That was obviously a game glitch or whatever. So it was very harsh to take it from him and give it to Chris. So for whatever reason, I gave it to Jack. I didn't give it to him. I just didn't give it to Chris. And yeah, Chris, 5 years later, still hates me. But we get on, which is good.
That's the main
It's
thing.
all fun and games.
It's all fun and games, and that's, I think, what the best thing about it is. And we've been able to go through this whole podcast so far, Dom, without talking about, actually, probably in comparison, the game you've had the most success on, and the series, you've had the most success in, and that's TGP Dirt. Now, when you brought this back in the spring of 2020, obviously we were in the midst of a pandemic, did you quite expect the level of interest that we had to come about from it in the offset? And obviously with that interest in mind then, what was going through your mind in the way of having to then organise it?
Yeah, so we had, I think, seasons 1, 2 and 3 on Dirt Rally 1. We had about 20 drivers in each season. That was pretty fun. We had, I think, Chris, Wingsman, fighting for the titles, pretty close. We had Isaac, Court, Alex, Owen, all getting wins. But then we decided to bring it to an end after season 3, Dirt Rally. People started to obviously get bored of it. I think a new Dirt had come out anyway, so attention sort of went away from that. We went back to just focusing on Project Cars, F1. But then suddenly Dirt Rally 2 came out. I think it was a game you could get on PlayStation Plus, and suddenly we said, well, let's do a league. I love rally. I've always loved rally games as a kid. I had rally games all the time. That was something I felt I was good at. I might not be the quickest in F1 and Project Cars and GT, but on rally it just seems to suit. Maybe it's my aggressive style on the pad, sort of the way I flick the controller so often rather than being smooth. Maybe that is a benefit for rally games. And yeah, suddenly Dirt Rally 2 was out. People wanted to do it, and before we knew it, we had 40 drivers signed up for the first season, which was brilliant. And yeah, it was great numbers. So we, and then season 4, and then since then we've gone on to do seasons 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and we're only again bringing it to an end now because I feel like we've had a good run, a great run. Let's end it on a high rather than potentially going too far and then maybe regretting not ending it earlier. But yeah, it's brilliant. I love Dirt Rally, and it was so nice to be able to do a championship where I was actually good at, unlike the other games.
It was really good, and you had a tense title battle as well with Roy and obviously many others who were quick in that division there. How was it that you were able to beat Roy to that season 8 title? Because this is the man who very nearly beat Softy in Softy's dominant phases in the early stages of TGP Dirt. So how did you able to put together a season that could rival him?
Yes, so I mean, at the time when, of course, we had Softy and Roy fighting toe-to-toe with one another in TGP Dirt, and then Softy wasn't in the seasons after that, and Roy, everyone seemed to think was going to dominate himself. It's like, well, Roy was by far quicker than everyone else, so Roy's now going to go on to master the next few seasons. But we had a good system in place to make sure it was as tight as ever. We because at the time of seasons 4 and 5, when Softy and Roy were so much quicker than everyone else, that's because those two used to do lap after lap on time trial leaderboards before doing their runs. So we brought some new regulations in from seasons 6 onwards, where you had to do all your runs in one go. You couldn't do one, go off, do some practice, come on, do the second, go off, do some practice, come on, do the third. You had to do it all in one go. We brought the stages down. The rally time went from sort of 30 minutes down to sort of 25. So we brought it down a little bit, again, just to sort of make it more possible to do all your stages in one go by bringing down the duration. We brought in some new regulations. We had new cars. Suddenly we had the 2000 vehicles, which I obviously seem to do very well at. The R5 sort of were very good at spacing out the field. The 2000s, very close, very competitive. And yeah, suddenly, from season 6 onwards, we've had absolutely 4 incredible seasons. You know, different champions, so many different rally winners. It's just been absolutely thrilling. And suddenly, I think it got to season 7, I realised I was actually quite consistent. It got to the point where I stopped crashing from rallies and was always finishing. I think I finished like 4th, 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 3rd, 4th or something in season 7. And I thought, hang on a minute. I've got some good pace here and I'm consistent. If I can just find a little bit extra, I can suddenly maybe be at the pace to challenge for a rally win. I've never quite, I'd threatened to take a win in the past, but, typically I bottled it and then finished 4th. But going on to
like
season
Phil
8.
Bardwell, didn't you?
Yeah, it does. Phil Bardwell, known for his bottles. But season 8, I managed to get the Phil Bardwell out of me. And yeah, I think suddenly at the start of the season, Roy was off the pace in Finland. I went on to win my first ever rally, and suddenly, I never expected to be in the title fight, but suddenly I had like a 10-point lead, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then as the round sort of went on, I think Roy might have won the next rally, which closed the gap, but then after that I would beat him, which then extended the gap, then he closed the gap, and then suddenly with 2 rounds to go, I think I had like a 13-point lead, and I was starting to think, I can actually win this. Like, I shouldn't be in the fight, but I somehow am. Suddenly my pace was really good, and then the penultimate round was drawn Monaco, and I couldn't believe my luck. Roy had never beaten me in Monaco. I had a 13-point lead. The chances were I was going to extend my gap going into the last round, but no, that wasn't the case. I think I finished 4th in Monaco. I didn't even make the podium, and Roy won it. So suddenly Roy was back in the lead of the championship, and I knew that was probably it then. I sort of messed up the penultimate round, but yeah, I mean, the next round, Poland, a round that never has suited me. I don't like Poland as a rally in the game. I love the country, but yeah, suddenly I don't know what happened. I just seemed to. That was probably, I think, my best ever performance in rally. I won the rally. No one expected me to win it. Everyone expected Roy to win it. It was a non-DLC event. Another reason why it was so close is because we had these new DLC rallies that no one had done before, so everyone was learning new stages, which is why it was so close rather than people knowing they'd already done it like 18 times in time trial. But suddenly it was a non-DLC title decider. It seemed pretty clear that Roy was going to beat me, but no, I had the best performance I think ever, and the Citroen really suited that rally. I think I beat Roy by 5 seconds in the end, and I beat Phil by 0.8 to the win, and that was enough to win the championship. And yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to repeat that again. That's a 1 in a million thing, but it was brilliant to win and to beat Roy, because Roy is probably, maybe after Softy, the second best driver ever in the Dirt League. So to beat him was a pretty good feeling.
I imagine that was very rewarding, and that competitive spirit which you mentioned about that must have filled that hole quite nicely as well. So that must have been a good feeling too. So we've covered almost 10 years then of TGP series in a very short space of time, but this podcast I feel could go on for hours, and we would feel like we'd only scratching the surface. But on the 10th anniversary, then, Dom, what's next for TGP? Are we going to have another 10 years? Where do you see the future of TGP going?
Honestly, I have no idea. It's going really well. Everyone seems to be really enjoying it. We've got some good atmosphere, good vibes within the league, really close competitions. We're all looking forward to the new games coming out, the new switch over to the PS5, of course. And yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. I think we're just going to... I never really intended it to go over 10 years, but now that we're here and it's the 10th anniversary, I feel like let's just carry on, Why stop now? Everyone's enjoying it. We've got time to organise it. I can fit it around my job, which is good. So, yeah, I don't know how long it's going to go on for, but let's just keep continuing it. We keep signing, new drivers. We've had the TGP2 Racer Champions. Great to see Isaac. We've got Alex Zaffro, famous YouTuber, now racing in TGP2. So let's just keep going. Let's just keep having fun and, keep producing some good racing.
Brilliant. That's what we like to hear. Now, Dom, I'm going to come to the bit which I have done with everyone so far, and my quick fire questions, if I may. So, best driver at TGP in the last 10 years?
Oh, Softy, I think. Just Softy. Just over James. Softy, yes. I'm going Softy.
Yeah? Not even Isaac or someone like that?
Oh, right. I mean, Yeah, I mean, Softy in terms of TGP as being the best, he's achieved the most. But I mean, yeah, the standout star has to be Isaac, doesn't it? He's now an esports world champion. He's now representing Veloci, racing for McLaren Shadow. Isaac's the true star of TGP. And I taught him everything he knew, Mike. It all came
You were
from
his
me.
mentor, weren't you?
Yeah, I was his
Yeah.
mentor. He was like, Dom, I'm so young, I don't know what to do. And I was like, mate, come to TGP Series. I'll train you up. You'll be a great. And now he's the great. So, I don't want to take any credit for that. But it was all me
It's
that got
funny
Isaac
because
to where
that
he
is
was.
exactly what didn't happen. Sorry, did happen, obviously.
Oh,
You taught him everything you knew. It was a great moment to witness
thank you.
and see him grow to such a fantastic star that he's become. All
Yeah,
thanks to
incredible.
you, Dom. It's brilliant. Favourite moment of TGP so far?
Oh, I mean, again, so many close battles, so many great seasons. It's hard to pick a best moment. Maybe, oh, I don't know. There was a four-way title decider once in TGB one. I think between James, Dan, Ben, and Dean.
Mm.
That was epic. That was thrilling. A last lap pass to win the championship in Italy from James. I think that's got to be my standout moment. I think.
The most difficult moment you've had to deal with as a league host?
Oof, I mean, it's just sort of, I guess, letting drivers know that they've got a penalty. It's always quite harsh to, I don't know, you don't want to be the bearer of bad news. I'm, in a lot of the cases, a messenger. I don't decide a lot of the decisions. The stewards decide on that. But I'm the one, of course, who's got to tell the guys it's a penalty. And if it's a quite a serious penalty, and I've got to say, look, I'm sorry, but we're gonna, end your time in the league. That's always a hard call. I'd say that is the hardest thing I ever have to do in TGP.
What's the most controversial moment you've had to deal with?
I think the idea of Owen representing TGP in the Cody's League Championship. I don't know how Owen managed to scrape that in, but
How that was allowed to happen. Yeah, no, I see
yeah,
what you
how
mean.
that was allowed to happen.
Um, what's been your favourite league that you've started up, or the series within it? What's been your favourite of that?
I mean, obviously I'm biased. I'd say TGB Dirt. That's a league I'm good at, but I think you have to say TGB1 or TGB2, and you probably have to go with TGB1. We've seen so many different champions over the years, so many great memories. It's the league that started it all. I think we have to go. We have to go TGB1. That's where it all started.
And lastly, then, the last question we'll finish off with: when are you going to pay Phil £5?
Phil owes me £5. We made a bet at the start of the season of who would finish ahead of who in Dirt Rally, and I finished ahead of him, but he never paid up. And then season after season, it's now been 9 seasons. He owes me 45 quid from £5 every season. So it's him that owes me money, and it's not £5, it's 45 quid, Mike.
You charge worse interest than most banks of this rate. This is unbelievable. Well, Dom, it's been an absolute pleasure, as it always is. Thank you very much for everything you've done for TGP Series so far, and are continuing to do, and I'm sure will continue to do so. Any last thoughts that you have before we sign off?
No, I guess just thank you, Mike. Thank you to everyone that's been a part of TGP these last 10 years. I'm just the guy that organises it, but there's been so many people that have ran things. We've had Owen running the FIFA League. We've had the guys running the Xbox, Alex. We've had so many great streamers, commentators, racers, and TGP is what it is because of all the great guys we've had. So thank you, everyone. And yeah, long may it continue, hopefully.
Long may it continue. Well, you draw us a close on this series as well, and hopefully we'll have many more series and events to talk about in the future months, years, decades. You'll find
Maybe.
out. Well, make sure you go and follow TGP Series on Twitter at TGP Series. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel TGP Series. Follow Dom Smith on Twitter if you really want to. He's quite boring. And thank you for joining us once again, Dom. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Mike. Great to be a part of the podcast.
So there we have it. The end of Season 2. And thank you as ever for joining us over these past 6 weeks to hear about us talk about a racing league which you'd think wouldn't mean that much at all. However, in fact, it means the world to all of us. Thank you so much for joining, and we look forward to the next series which should be coming to you later in the year around Christmas time, where we chat to more icons about their time in TGP Series. So for now, goodbye.